Well, we've been sharing a little bit that it is Shabbat Shuba. So let's talk about what that could possibly mean for us, this idea of Shabbat Shuba. In the prophet Hosea, who is in 8th century, before the Common Era, an 8th century prophet, it's this Haftarah that we're going to be reading tomorrow morning. And we get the name from it because it says so very clearly in the first words from the prophet. It says, Shuva Yisrael ad Adonai Elohecha. Return to Israel, to the Lord. Return, O Israel, to Adonai, your God. And that's the first line. And then it talks about all of these things that Israel has done wrong. So you see, part of what our ancients believed is that God punished. And there were these consequences for their actions. And I know that they felt that way. And I understand where they got that from. But I never believed that. I couldn't. How could I? The sense that we had hard experiences in our past does not bring a God to punish. And I think that's why we struggle, many of us struggle, with some of these prayers in our High Holy Day liturgy. God is up on high and really has this sense of judging. And I want to be clear about something. I know our ancestors felt that way. I know our ancestors were doing so to try and make sense of the hurt that was happening in their lives. And so if you believe, like I do, that there's a human hand in the writing of the Torah, that means that some of it also reflects human experience. So if it reflects human experience, that doesn't mean that it's without God. For me, God's all about it. I'm good with that. But I can also see where there's a near miss. Because sometimes when people are hurting, the last thing we want to do is say, well, it's your fault. I think that's what we see. So whether it's the prophet Hosea or later on in the text or some of the other liturgy that we get to encounter, I'm not so sure that it's really about God creating a world where God wants to turn away. I don't believe it. But I also know this, and I know a lot of you know this too. When there's something that's hard in my life, sometimes I feel like God turns away. And how can we respond to that? I know that might be how some of us feel, and frankly, I think so did the ancients. I already said I recognize that there's a human hand in the writing of the Torah, and in the Torah, Moses is about to come to the end of his life. And God is saying to Moses, I don't think this is totally fair, by the way, but God says to Moses that these people that you're bringing to this land, and they're going to cross over the river, the sea, and they're going to get to the other side, and they're going to have this freedom. Well, they're going to go astray, Moses. Like, why is God saying this to poor Moses? Like, he has enough to worry about. But God does. And again, I don't actually think it's God's voice. I think it's those that followed Moses were trying to make sense of their version of a broken world. And so God says to Moses in the text that these folks are going to go astray, and then after they go do that, I'm going to turn my face. My face will not, my countenance, that face, God's face, will not be upon them. I think that's what they felt. Which means that our ancestors were just human like us. They felt the weight of the world like us. They felt concerns about God abandoning us like us. And they felt even estranged or angry at God like us. And I think this is a good time for us to talk about some of those things, because I actually don't think that they turned away. God turned away. I'm not even sure if the people really turned away. I think they got tripped. I think some of them turned away. And there is a sense of not just leaving God, there was a concern about leaving God in order to go towards those other gods, phony gods, that would lead them into harm's way and would lead them into doing harm to other people. And if that was really going to be the case, then what did God free them for? And brought them to a promised land, to be a light to the nations. So there's an opportunity here, right? We know it from past presidents, freedom isn't free. And we know that from our own tradition, that redemption isn't just about our own freedom. It comes with purpose. So can we look at these words where it talks about God hiding God's face a little bit differently? The Hebrew says, Anochi haster astir panai. I will surely hide my face. That's what it says in the Torah. But there's this Hasidic teacher who happens to have been the grandson of this very famous, the founder of Hasidism, the founder of Hasidut, the Baal Shem Tov. There was his grandson, his name is Moshe Chaim Ephraim of a place called Sudilikov. Sudilikov. Been practicing that all day. Now this man, he understands the verse a little differently. Again, the Hebrew is 4 words, Anochi, Haster, Astir, Panai. I will surely hide my face. And he cuts it in half. He rereads it. Instead of one whole phrase, the way it seems to be written, he says, Anochi Haster, the I-ness of God. Anochi, I. Hastir is hidden. The I-ness of God is going to be hidden from us through our absence. Then it will go on to say, Astir Panai, God's face will be hidden. So what could that mean? I think God is hidden only when we stop looking. I don't think God is ever absent. I think God is hidden. I think it's hard to find. If we're going to play hide and seek, I think God is hard to find. But it also depends on how we look. Because if you want to open your eyes in a different kind of a way, well, then maybe we can say that God is really easy to find. But I have to kind of train my eye to look a little bit differently. If I'm looking for the sea to split, well, then God's hard to find. If I'm waiting to feel my heartbeat, well, then God's kind of easy to find. It depends on what we bring to the table. So a lot of the sermons in Rosh Hashanah and, warning for Yom Kippur, it's not going to be so much about the I part. It's going to be about the us part, the human being part. So warning. But for tonight, we can't run away from the sense of the I and saying, in this game of hide and seek, what are the rules and how are we playing? How can we confront this idea of not just that feeling that God is hard to find? How do we confront that? Maybe we feel that there's something blocking us. Maybe we feel that there's some other kind of stumbling block. Maybe we feel that I'm not interested, or I've had a hard time, or I've been disappointed or angry. I think that for many of us, life is really hard to do it on our own. I think life is hard just to go along our own way. We need someone at our side. We need that special friend, that companion. And I would also say, another presence that can support us when we feel so weak. But what is it that gets in the way? Why do we feel like we don't need that? Or that it eludes me? I want to just say to you that in the Torah portion, there's a great teacher. His name is James Jacobson Meisels. He's a rabbi. He's a PhD. He's brilliant. And he looks in the Torah portion and he looks at this thing about God hiding God's face and turning away. He recognizes that there's an antidote for that. And it's a song. There's a poem in the text but we can say that it's a song. A particular song that everybody has to memorize. It says clearly, write down the song, teach it to the people of Israel, and put it in their mouths so they remember it by heart. Put it in their mouths because that song is going to be the witness. The song is meant to awaken people. And I think songs and poetry and music can stir us more so than rabbis. I think that poems and music and songs can help us find a way back and move us the way that typical words might not be able to do. But if it moves us to turn, that's where we are, the turning. If something can move us to turn again, to figure out how do we come back home? How do we come back home to ourselves? How do we come back home to this space? How do we come back home to Jewish community or just to being a real human being who's living with integrity? However you see it, a true song is going to enable the people of Israel back then and still today to help us find God's face, whatever that means to you. Whatever that means to you. I hope this is going to be the season of encounters, the time when we get to open our hearts a little bit more, a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, in order to be moved so that we can walk in God's ways and take care of each other better and step forward and recognize who needs us. It's through the song and everything that's in the song, faith and hope and meaning and possibility. It's the song that helps us build a bridge to get over to the other side of anything that we do. So if it's not a song for you, then find your, in quotes, song. What's going to be the inspiration? What's going to be the message? What's going to be the something that you need in order to give you permission to return home and be open, perhaps for a different kind of encounter that will help us to be grounded in the year ahead. Let's turn back to the Siddur.